The 2023 Shanghai Auto Show. What's the latest in cars and technology from Chinese and other international automakers? Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Hundreds of thousands have attended the Shanghai Auto Show, where the latest cars and auto technology have been on display. One of the big stories is how much electric vehicles are driving change in China and transforming the automotive industry. We begin with this report from CGTN's Chen Yilin in Shanghai.
Welcome to Auto Shanghai 2023. The theme of this year, embracing the new era of the automobile industry. With over 1,000 companies taking part, dozens of new cars are making their global debut here. And for the first time since 2019, executives are flying in from across the world.
We couldn't wait any longer to be here, so we are so happy to be back in China. It's very important for Porsche. We have celebrating our 75 years for Porsche, 100 years racing in Le Mans. A lot of good stuff going on, but so happy to be here then.
Wandering around the Shanghai Auto Show, there's no mistaking that electric and autonomous vehicles are taking center stage. Here are some of the leading Chinese makers of electric vehicles, or EVs. China is now leading the revolution in this area. In 2021, China accounted for 1/3 of the world's total EV exports. Where once Chinese products might have been labeled as low quality, low cost, or just not fashionable, now it's very different. With the ever-growing EV market, even brands whose strongest selling point is gasoline-powered engines are embracing electrics. Brands are also reinventing life on board with assisted driving features, offering a new level of comfort, safety, and immersive experience.
At the crossroads to future mobility with electrified engine technology, it's extremely competitive. We have to be honest. There's a lot of also newcomers to the market coming, and all are doing a great job. Yeah? So we really love to have this lively competition. It gives the customer many choices.
More than half of the world's top 100 Tier 1 auto parts suppliers and makers are also displaying their latest key technologies. Chen Yilin, CGTN, Shanghai.
There is a lot of road to cover, so to speak. So let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Shanghai is Tu Li. He is Managing Director of Sino Auto Insights. With us too from Shanghai is Bill Russo. He is founder and CEO at Automobility. From Buffalo, New York, also joining the discussion is Lauren Fix. She is the Editor-in-Chief of Car Coach Reports. And from Gothenburg, Sweden, we are joined by Douglas Bolduc. He is the Managing Editor of Automotive News Europe. Welcome to all of you. Tu Li, as we just heard, one of the dominant themes that's coming out of the Shanghai Auto Show is the electric vehicle industry and how it's doing in China. One analyst says we are now seeing the end from what he calls ICE. That is the internal combustion engine in China. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I think within 5 years, we're going to see almost 90 to 100% penetration rate of EVs, and that is only going to accelerate as they start going overseas as well and expanding in those markets. So yeah, I think this show marks the end of ICE and the beginning of the EV era.
So, Tu Li, what do you make of how far the EV industry has come in China and where it's going to go?
So it's come quite a long way in a short period of time. With the Chinese government's help. But I'd also give a lot of credit to Tesla, because until Shanghai Giga, the first Model 3 rolled off the line late December of 2019, it was still kind of struggling, and Tesla became the catalyst for the industry going to 6.5 million, around 6.5 million NEVs sold in 2022. Now, Li Xiang, who is the founder of Li Auto, he says that the take rate or the penetration rate for NEVs will be 80% by 2025. So if he's anywhere close, if we're anywhere close to 80%, then I would also echo Elliot's sentiments that the ICE era is over in China for sure, and eventually, but very quickly, will be closing in Europe and the United States.
So, Julie, as you say, Tesla was the catalyst that set this off, but that was only at the end of 2019, as you point out. So in the space of, 4 years, the domestic Chinese manufacturers have made quite big strides, haven't they?
They have. There's been a tremendous amount of competition, and last year, despite supply chain disruptions and COVID, the NEV sector grew like crazy, 100% year over year from 2021. Now, the CPCA, or the China Passenger Car Association, still forecasts that we'll hit 8.5 million units this year. So this is a down year, and we're going to get close to 9 million units probably. So again, China is leading the way, and it's going to pull the entire rest of the world, the major regions, Europe and the United States, along with it.
Bill Russo, one of the cars that's getting a lot of attention at the Shanghai Auto Show is the Seagull, I should say, making a lot of waves. It's manufactured by BYD, and it's going to be selling for, it is selling for 78,000 yuan. That's about $11,300. I mean, looking at that price and looking at the car, how much of a game changer is that going to be?
No, it changes the whole value equation. What it does is it restructures the market. BYD is already by far leading NEV player with 1.8 million units sold in 2022. A product like this is not I wouldn't call a stripped down car. It's a well-equipped car. It's got airbags front and back. It's got a 10-inch screen. It's got adequate range, all at a very attractive price point. What it will do is it will hollow out the bottom of the market. It will basically absorb all of the low-end EV companies' volume, because it's not a huge product like a Ling or a Cherry product that was selling at the base entry price point. So the real question is for BYD. I mean, one of the things to note about them is they outsold in the first quarter of this year Volkswagen in the aggregate, not just in the EV, but in the aggregate. They are the #1 brand now in China in terms of vehicle sales. So that's an indication of where this market is going, and with a product, and all of that's being done without the Seagull. So when you bring a product at this price point into the market, it's going to completely change the game in terms of the price-value equation for the market.
Lauren, great to have you with us on the show. I mean, when you look at the price of that Seagull, $11,300, and then you look at, let's say, the least expensive Tesla that's sold here, which is the Model 3, that's just around $40,000. I mean, how does one explain that huge price difference?
Well, that's a huge price gap, and BYD has done a great job taking over the market, and they've taken it from Volkswagen. They're also supplying technology to Toyota for their BZ series, and that was also shown at the Shanghai Auto Show. I think getting a vehicle here in the U.S. at $11,000 would make a huge difference. We don't have as big of a take rate here in the U.S. We're about 5.8% of the vehicles being sold are electric. The highest number being that in California of cars on the road of being 18%. So we're far off from other countries that are farther ahead. We have a lot of different issues here as far as infrastructure and charging, and I think that's what's holding people back. But $11,000 will certainly open up a lot of people's eyes.
Well, as you say, there's been difficulty here for electric vehicle penetration, but President Biden has been trying to change that. He's making a big push for the transition to electric vehicles. But as you point out, he's facing resistance from manufacturers, from consumers, and there are also quite a few legal issues that they have to circumvent as well. I mean, the plan, according to the White House, is for 2/3 of all new passenger cars and 1/4 of new trucks, Lauren, will be electric by 2032. That's not that far away. Is that likely?
Yeah, I don't think that's likely at all. The biggest problem we have is an infrastructure issue. There's very few charging stations in many areas of the country because of the way our country is laid out versus others. So if you go to a parking lot and there's 2 charging stations, one doesn't work and one person's left their vehicle there for a while, you have no place to charge. About 30% of homes do not have garages or places to charge. So that means they have to use public charging. Right now, we're at about 130,000 charging stations across the United States. That means that for every charger, there's 10,000 cars that need to charge. That's a problem. Yes, some people will charge at home at a level 2, but fast charging is an issue. Unlike China, where Tesla's opening up their charging stations quicker to non-Tesla vehicles, we don't have that situation. And those Tesla vehicles that are plugging in are only getting level 2 charging. So there's really not that much of a benefit, and only some of those chargers are opening. Although they're pushing that $7,500 tax credit, it's now been so restrictive that only 16 cars qualify, and that certainly presents a problem.
Yeah, you're talking about infrastructure. I mean, is it a bit of a catch-22 situation here where the people who would build this kind of infrastructure are saying, well, there's not enough vehicles to make it worth our while, and that, of course, means that not enough vehicles are being sold.
Right, it's sort of the egg and the chicken scenario.
Yeah.
There are lots of different companies installing charging stations, but what we have here is probably different than other countries. You can purchase a charging station for $1 million on your property. You can charge for the plugging in and then the charging. But unfortunately, if there's a problem with that charger, that's on you to get it repaired. And we're starting to see that there's, you'll see a bank of chargers where only, 2 are working of 5. And that is a problem. We have a lot of other issues here with infrastructure in California. There's still a problem with charging on public streets, and a lot of people fighting for chargers. And until that's resolved, that's going to be a big problem.
Tu Lee, looking ahead at what's coming in the electric vehicle industry, let's listen to the co-founder and president of the Chinese automaker NIO. This is what he had to say.
I think 2023 will be a year to further increase the introduction of electric vehicles and further popularize electric vehicles in terms of strategy. This is good for all car brands. At the same time, the competition is now more intense. The number of brands and the number of car models has increased, and at the tactical level, it's very plausible that competition will only become more intense.
So, Tu Lee, at present, Chinese vehicle exports are something like 3 million. I mean, how do you see that growing in the years ahead?
So the Chinese EV companies likely see competition not as intense in the European market. And so they're going to be anxious to export those vehicles. And more than 20 brands have already either announced, including NIO and BYD, that they're either entering some of the European markets or already have. And so BYD alone this year wants to export 800,000 vehicles. Now, that's just not in Europe. It's also Latin America and Southeast Asia. But what we're going to see is China EV Inc., what I collectively call all these Chinese EV companies. They're going to use the export markets, and we're including Tesla here as a pressure release valve, because we're in the midst of a price war, and the lowest man wins. And guess what? Tesla's been cutting price. BYD has aggressively priced their vehicles, and actually BYD updated their pricing on the Seagull. It is now below 11,000. So it's around $10,500 now. So if we let them, if Europe lets them, they'll see a flood of Chinese EV vehicles over the next several years. And so you can already see the impact, because BYD entered Israel. Within 6 months, they were the #1 EV maker. They've entered Latin American markets, and they're some of the top EV brands in those markets as well. So it's not a product issue. It's going to be how many do we let in, and is there any protectionist measures that we need to put in place if I'm a Europe, Latin America, or any of these other countries.
So, Bill Russo, that Seagull becomes even more attractive now, as Tu Lee tells us. It's under $10,000. But Chinese consumers are not looking for just affordability. They're looking for cutting-edge technology. I mean, how will that drive the future of the EV industry?
Yeah, I think viewed from abroad, when we look at China, we tend to have this, I'd say, dated view of the way China comes at this question. This is not a low-end market anymore. I mean, it's always been very attractive for foreign companies to compete here, because they get not only better volume, but better pricing. And as the market shifts to EV, we have to recognize it's not just about making low-end products anymore. Chinese consumers expect their EV to be a technology showcase. And we do see that. The range of brands that are here, not just BYD, they tend to suck out all the air out of the room in terms of the volumes and sales question and the value for money question. But when you look at some of the new competitors, the companies that are backed by internet digital economy money, you have a whole lot of what we call smart EV companies, Nio, Xiaopeng, Li Auto, even some traditional companies that have pivoted into that space. They're delivering a connected experience, and there's far more attention paid to HMI and the user-centric business model, which demands their EV be a technology showcase. So I think in China, you're going to see emerging a whole new way of thinking about designing and upgrading the experience of the vehicle from the inside out, not just the fact that you're powering the wheel with a e-motor and a battery.
Douglas Bolduc, what are your main takeaways from the auto show in Shanghai in terms of technology and the cars that are coming online?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because that was one of the main takeaways, was just how quickly the computer systems and the touchscreens worked in the different Chinese cars. You're so used to, when you're using a touchscreen for a lot of automakers, a bit of a pause, or it takes a few, sometimes a few minutes for it to turn on, whereas it was immediate. When we were testing and looking at a few of the BYD cars, it was amazing how fast and reactive it was, like, touching an iPhone. Immediate active, you could see all the different apps right off the bat. So that was quite impressive, and also probably send shockwaves to a lot of the European and American automakers, just because their HMI systems are just not at that same level as of yet, and that's part of the smart EV that you're talking about, and the prices of the cars, the use of less expensive battery chemistries, but still getting the same kind of range and distance. There are a lot to offer, but it was a great point by Tuli about the protectionism. We've already heard from the CEO of Stellantis, second largest automaker in Europe, saying that he gave some warnings and saying that the Europeans are going to need to defend their turf here from a whole wave of cars coming in from China. So it will probably be some limitations and some roadblocks to a lot of the push into the European market, just because the Europeans they could just be overwhelmed by the quality of the cars.
Douglas, one of the things I've heard is that, you make the point about the advances in screen technology, but one of the points I've heard is that the big challenge for almost all EV manufacturers is battery technology. So are you saying that the Chinese have also made significant advances there?
Yes. They've made some big strides when it comes to lithium, the LFP, lithium phosphate batteries. You get a decent amount of range for a lot less price, and we also saw from Nio their battery swapping stations, which are unbelievably practical. When you can go in less than minutes, you get a new battery and off you go. You'll never be able to do that from a charging station. And so that idea is also sort of taking on. They want to have 70 stations operational in Europe by the end of the year. Very ambitious, and they have an equally, a supremely more ambitious plan in China for their swapping stations. And so there's just a really progressive thought going into the battery chemistries, a lot of openness to getting, having battery chemistries that provide the range that you want, as well as, like I said, swapping stations.
Lauren, Looking at the company that's making news in Shanghai, making waves, as I said, BYD with their Seagull. I mean, they already sell vehicles in the United States. They sell buses here in the United States. But what does the future look like for Chinese passenger vehicles, cars, to enter this market?
Well, they've made some attempts at the Detroit Auto Show pre-COVID. It didn't have such great traction. We are seeing VinFast coming into the U.S. They're building a factory here. And that's going to be the qualifier because the government's mandating that if you want that $7,500 tax credit, you're going to have to produce those vehicles here in the U.S. because we are the second largest market. We used to be number one. And in order for BYD, NIO, and the rest of the companies to really get some traction here in the U.S. and to get sales, they're going to need a dealer network or to partner in with the dealer network. And that's going to be their biggest challenge because of the way our country is laid out. But I think that there's going to be a lot of protectionism for sure. And that's something that we're going to be addressing. I'm sure the government is well aware of that. Plus the fact that the batteries are being made in China, we're having an issue with that as well. For 2023, 40% of the battery needs to be produced here in the U.S., and it goes up 10% per year. And by the time you move up to 90% of the battery being produced here, that's going to eliminate using Chinese materials and Chinese batteries. So I'm not sure how BYD will do in that case.
Tu Le, you do a lot of work on technology in EV vehicles. Where do you see the main technological advances coming from? What about things like communicating, the cars communicating with other systems, with being networked as well? Will we see some progress there?
Yeah, I do see that, but the other area I see is battery tech. So NIO, CATL, through Chery have announced that, and BYD have announced that they're going to be commercializing sodium-ion batteries. Lower range, lower price. So at $10,500, the Seagull could even be lower price if using sodium-ion batteries. So I think that's an immediate opportunity for technology to advance the sale and adoption rates of electric vehicles. Now, unfortunately for Europe and the United States, sodium-ion research and development is being driven out of China as well. And with the technology, it's a lot easier when it's hardware and software, because if the Chinese market has a very, very highly connected vehicle that communicates with the infrastructure and things like that, but Europe isn't ready for that, if you're a software developer, you can just turn off those features, and when it's ready for showtime, then they just turn them on in Europe. And with the United States, I would argue that there are already companies that are importing from China. GM's doing it with the Buick Envision. Polestar's doing it with the Polestar 2. And this is despite the 2018 tariff of 27.5%. So the Chinese will enter the U.S. market, few of them before 2025. And Tesla has announced they're shipping to Canada from Shanghai Giga last week. And Ford has announced that they'll be shipping the Nautilus, the Lincoln Nautilus, the China-built Lincoln Nautilus in 2024 to the U.S. as well. And so despite the protectionism, because the Inflation Reduction Act is by far one of the largest protectionist measures by the U.S., we're going to see that technology come, the Chinese technology that the digital natives in China love, also enter Europe and the United States and be ready once the Americans and the Europeans kind of get familiar with the capabilities of their vehicles.
Okay. Douglas, the Chinese are already exporting to something like 50 countries. Europe, of course, is a major destination. This is the CEO of Zeekr Europe. Let's listen.
Starting in Europe this year, we'll be delivering cars in the Netherlands and in Sweden by the end of this year already. And then we'll be expanding into other markets throughout 2025. And our intention is to cover most of Western Europe by 2026.
So Douglas, how much of an impact do you see China having in Europe, for quality, affordable electric vehicles?
Oh, it's going to be a huge impact, because it's an interesting array of vehicles with a very appealing design, different offers. And the opportunity potentially, again, it's been mentioned a couple of times today, the Seagull, to see a vehicle get into the market in the 10 to 15,000 euro range. In March, Volkswagen was talking about their big goal being to get to the 20,000 euro range. And if someone's coming in and is 5,000 under that, even if we're just tacking on the tariffs and the potential extra price, it would be a real game changer in the market, because it would extend the electric vehicle to a whole new range of people. And one of the issues that we're having here in Europe is that the move away from the combustion engine is basically wiping out the affordable mini car for a lot of people. So affordable mobility in Europe has become a major issue that gets talked about a lot. And affordable electric mobility, I think really the only car available right now, also made in China, is the Dacia Spring, one of the offshoots of Renault, which is in the 10,000 euro range. So it's not the most attractive vehicle. So if the Chinese can come into Europe with an attractive price offer, with attractive warranty, decent reliability, and also a strong service offer, they're going to win over some customers for sure.
Julie, what do you see, very quickly please, ahead for luxury brands like Porsche and Jaguar, for instance?
I see that, so Porsche is effectively keeping Volkswagen Group afloat in China specifically. 50% of Volkswagen Group's profits come from China. And if Porsche hiccups, they've only grown in China, so they're a rock star here. But if you look at the Model S Plaid or the Lotus Electra that is launching later this year in the UK and European markets, you see EVs that are high performance, and it doesn't take a ton of billions of dollars of R&D. So with Porsche, they need to really be able, and the heritage brands need to be able to really pivot into technology and creating a great user experience for their customers.
All right, we need to park it there. We have run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us, and thank you for watching another edition of The Heat.